Hello my dear friends, welcome to Live Prep. In the previous lecture, we studied about the human respiratory system. So what are the various organs that are present, how exactly they are arranged, everything we have studied in that particular lecture. So now in this lecture, we are focusing on what is the exact mechanism of breathing. So that means here we are focusing on how exactly we are able to do inspiration and how exactly we are able to do expiration. Yes or no? So all these things we will study, but please remember, many students are trying to by heart this particular process. Please don't try to by heart this. It is completely 100% concept based. Try to understand the concept so that you can easily understand all these particular points. Very important for examination. So many times many questions they ask in this particular concept. So now let us focus on this particular concept. First let me explain some information, then accordingly we will go for NCERT content. So in this way we will go with this particular one. Now let us see this. So what actually the breathing means? Breathing means, so in the previous lecture we studied here. Under the breathing we are studying about two things. What is this? Atmospheric air should be taken into the lungs, and this particular part is called as inspiration. It is called as inspiration. So when we are taking air into the lungs from the atmosphere, that is called as inspiration. And within the lungs means what? Ultimately it is the alveoli they are present. So within the alveoli this air is present, and this alveolar air is released out into the atmosphere, and that particular step is called as expiration. So in this way this breathing is inspiration plus expiration. This is what about the breathing is. So in this one, how exactly this inspiration is taking place, how exactly the expiration is taking place. So already we have some basic introduction in the first lecture. So now let us see this. Suppose these are the lungs. Suppose these are the lungs. Suppose these are the lungs. Now let us see here. From the atmosphere, now this air should enter through this particular lungs. Yes or no? This is what. So now here you please understand. So in the chemistry we are studying these things. So please remember, air always moves from, please remember this, air always, this is the important concept, this is the logic, this is the logic. So based on this logic only this entire mechanism is based. So please understand this, air always moves from high pressure to high pressure to low pressure, high pressure to low pressure. This is the basic logical point, and ultimately entire mechanism is to satisfy this one only. This is the single statement. Based on this statement only we are talking about the inspiration and expiration process. Please remember, this is the ultimate thing. Air is always moving from high pressure to low pressure. Very good. Yes, we understood this. But the thing here is, there are 2 points here. One is atmosphere. Atmosphere, it will have its own pressure. And the other one is the lungs. In simple, I am drawing the lungs like this. So two things are there. One is atmosphere, other one is the lungs. Now the air is moving between atmosphere and lungs, lungs and atmosphere. In this one only. Between these only it is moving. Understood or not? And now what you are saying, air is always moving from high pressure to low pressure. So here you just understand one point. During inspiration we are saying that from the atmosphere air is coming into the lungs. During inspiration atmosphere to lungs. But during expiration, lungs to atmosphere. This is what it is happening. So air is moving like this. Air is moving like this means pressure is changing. Pressure is changing. Yes or no? Just now we said no. Air is always moving from high pressure to low pressure. That means this is the inspiration. This is the inspiration. This is the expiration. Please understand the concept here. If you understand the concept, then only you can understand NCERT content. This is expiration. Yes, up to this we understood. And just now what I said, air is always moving from high pressure to low pressure. Forget about expiration. Now let us focus on inspiration. In the inspiration, air is moving from atmosphere to the lungs. From atmosphere to the lungs means during inspiration, atmospheric air pressure is high and the air pressure in the lungs is low. That's why during inspiration from high pressure to low pressure, air is moving. that is inspiration coming into the lungs. And during expiration what is happening? From the lungs it is going to atmosphere. That means during expiration, if you see, high pressure is present in the lungs and low pressure we are observing in atmosphere. This is what the meaning is. Understood or not? What we are saying, I am repeating several times, so please understand. Try to understand this. Don't try to by heart this. We are saying that air is always moving from high pressure to low pressure. Yes. So during inspiration also it should be followed. During inspiration, air is moving from atmosphere to lungs. That means atmospheric pressure is high and the pressure within the lungs, it is also called alveolar pressure. Lung pressure means pulmonary pressure or alveolar pressure, anything you can say. So this pressure is less. That's why from the atmosphere air is coming into the lungs. During expiration, from the lungs it is going into atmosphere. That means, so during expiration the pressure within the lungs is high when compared with the atmosphere. This is what the point is, and this is what the original mechanism. Yes, we understood. But here there is another important point is there. Now you just focus on this one. I hope now you understood this. Now come to the next point. What is the next point? See here, this lungs means this is part of human body. Please remember here lungs we are talking and atmosphere we are talking. Two things we are talking. Now let us see. Here you are writing low pressure, high pressure. In this way different pressures you are writing. And here you are writing high pressure, low pressure. That means different pressures you are writing. Very good. But please remember this is with comparison only you are writing. But originally if you see, can you change pressure of the lungs, pressure inside the lungs? Yes, we can change. But please remember, as an individual I am saying, I am having lungs in my thoracic cavity and I am saying that I can change the pressure inside the lungs. Very good, correct? But now you just see this is the atmosphere. Can, as a human being, as an individual, as an organism, can I change the pressure of this particular atmospheric pressure? No, I cannot change this particular atmosphere. Yes or no? That means in this entire process, even though this is happening, atmospheric pressure is always constant. It is always constant. Please remember, because this individual cannot change the pressure of atmosphere. Please remember this, individual cannot change the pressure of atmosphere, but individual can change the pressure within the lungs. Understood or not? So in this way, now let us see here. I will now give one rough example only. Please remember, this is just for understanding purpose. Now the same diagram I am drawing once again. Atmosphere. Okay, in the atmosphere. So in the normal condition at the sea level, in the chemistry we are studying these things. At the sea level, what is the atmospheric pressure? That is equal to 1 atmosphere. So it is 1 atm. Yes or no? This is the 1 atmospheric pressure. Let us take like this. Now what we are saying, individual or the organism cannot change atmospheric pressure, so it remains constant. So this is fixed. Then what about the lungs? What about the lungs? Then what happens in inspiration and expiration? Now observe carefully here. Now what is happening in the inspiration here? You are saying that in the inspiration here the pressure should be less. That means during inspiration the pressure inside the lungs is less than 1 atmosphere. Do you able to understand this? So we can change the pressure of the lungs. So here pressure is changed so that the pressure inside the lungs is less than 1 atmosphere. So when compared with this atmospheric pressure, the pressure inside the lungs is less. So now you can say that this is high, this is low. Always air is moving from high to low. That's why air is moving from atmosphere to the lungs. And this step is simply called as inspiration. Understood or not? Now next one. After the inspiration, expiration will occur. Now what happens? Now the pressure of this particular lungs is changed. Changed means what happens? It is more than 1 atmospheric pressure. Once it becomes more than 1 atmosphere, now compare this one. Now here it is high, here it is low. So now expiration will occur. I hope now we understood this. So here what is the original thing? We as a human being, we cannot change the pressure of the atmosphere. So that pressure will remains constant. So when compared with this, now we can change the pressure within the lungs. By changing the pressure within the lungs, now it can involve in either inspiration or expiration. If the pressure inside the lungs is less than atmospheric pressure, that means inspiration will occur. If the pressure within the lungs is more than atmospheric pressure, then expiration will occur. So in this way, ultimately what is happening? We are focusing only on changing the pressure within the lungs. We are focusing only on changing the pressure within the lungs. Is it clear? This is the most important point. So that's why we are not disturbing the atmospheric pressure, that whatever is there, that will be like that only. And here we are simply changing the pressure within the lungs. And because of this, inspiration and expiration will occur. That's it. This is the overall mechanism. But the point is, how you will change the pressure within the lungs. This is the question is. And for that one, there are some mechanism, there are some anatomical structures are present in our body. They are helping in changing the pressure. That's it. This is what the mechanism is. I hope now you understood what exactly the original point you need to get the grip. So if you understood this particular logic, you can easily understand the entire mechanism. Clear? Those things are very simple. But if you don't know why we are changing this particular pressure and volumes, then there is no use in studying this particular thing. That's what I am saying. Don't try to by heart this. This is the logic. Pressure difference should be created. Then only air movement will be occurring. If pressure within the lungs is less than atmospheric pressure, then air is taken into the lungs. This process is called as inspiration. So, what are the ones that are happening to decrease the pressure here? That is the thing that you need to study under inspiration. And then, if the pressure is increased within the lungs, then how exactly it will be done? That we will study under the separate mechanism. So that expiration will occur. So, in this way, what is our ultimate aim? How exactly the pressure within the lungs is changed, that you need to understand. That's it. This is what we are studying here. So here, how exactly the pressure of the lungs is changed. Now I will give you one logical question, so try to understand this. So lungs means what? They are airtight containers. Yes or no? Lungs are airtight containers. Okay. Now let us talk about one lung. Now since it is airtight container here, now you just understand this. See, please remember I am using a word called if. You can use the word if, or you can use a word called suppose. Anything you can use. Okay. If I am saying if lungs are able to contract and relax. See, you know that heart is able to contract and relax. Yes or no? Heart can contract and relax on its own. In this way, if lungs are also able to, if they are able to undergo contraction and relaxation, then we don't need to move up and down of our chest. Yes or no? The point here is lungs cannot contract and relax on their own. Please understand this. Lungs, like the heart can undergo contraction and relaxation. So there also it is creating some pressures. So with the help of that pressure, heart is able to pump blood into the blood vessels. But here the thing is, lungs are not able to undergo contraction and relaxation on their own like the heart. This is the major problem. First you need to understand the problem. Then what is the solution? Then you can understand. Lungs cannot contract and relax on their own. So that's why if lungs are able to contract, pressure is created. When they are undergoing relaxation, negative pressure will come, less pressure will come. Upon contraction, more pressure. Upon relaxation, less pressure. Yes, you can easily understand this. We don't need to study that much. But the point is, they cannot undergo contraction relaxation. This is what the problem is. If they cannot undergo contraction relaxation, then how you will increase the pressure inside this? How you will decrease pressure inside this? This is what the logic is. So that's why now we are studying about another one that is called as Boyle's law. In the chemistry, we are studying this one, Boyle's law. So what actually the Boyle's law says? Boyle's law says that pressure and volume are inversely related with each other. Very, very important thing. Now you need to understand this. Till now we are talking about pressure within the lungs, because we are comparing the pressure within the lungs with atmospheric pressure. And now what you are saying, this pressure and volume are inversely related. What is the meaning of this inverse relation? So pressure is increased. When the pressure is increased, when volume of that particular lung is decreased. Yes or no? So for the airtight container, if volume is decreased, pressure will be increased. If volume is increased, pressure will be decreased. So this is what the relation is. I hope now you understood this. Our aim is to change the pressures. But here the thing is, lungs cannot contract on their own. That's why by changing the volume of the lung, we can change the pressure within the lung. So if the volume of lung is decreased, pressure will be increased. If pressure is increased, what happens? From the lungs, air will go into the atmosphere. Expiration. Next one. When the volume of lung is increased, pressure within this will be decreased. When the pressure is decreased from the atmosphere, air will enter into the lung. Now here, from the lung, air will go into the atmosphere. I hope now you understood this. So now our aim is how to change the pressure within the lungs. The logic we got is you can change the pressure within lungs by changing the volume, but pressure and volume are inversely related. So now we will focus on how to change the volume of this particular lung. How to change the particular volume of the lung? Now let us see this. Here we are talking about the thoracic chamber. This is very important point. So please observe this one. I am drawing the rough diagram because if you are drawing the neat diagrams, they will take so much of time. So our aim is to understand the basic concept. So if you understand the concept, you don't need to worry about the remaining points. So what is this thoracic chamber is? See here, starting from this neck up to this diaphragm and on the lateral sides. So all the points I will tell you, so observe carefully here. Suppose this is the neck. Okay. So after this neck, so on this side, so we are having like this. The body we are having like this. Okay. So this is what. So now what actually this one is, if you are observing this, if you touch like this, you are getting some bones here. What are these bones? Please remember these bones names we will study separately under skeletal system, and here in simple we are studying here. This is called as thoracic cavity. For this thoracic cavity, the main thing is the vertebral column. So now let us observe this one. So there is a vertebral column here. So in the vertebral column here, so vertebrae are present. Okay. In the thoracic cavity, total 12 vertebrae. 12 thoracic vertebrae are present. Vertebra is singular, vertebrae is plural. So total 12 thoracic vertebrae are present. Okay, fine. Where they are present? On the dorsal side. This is the dorsal side, this is ventral side. Please remember, locations are also very important. So this vertebrae are present on the dorsal side. And on the ventral side, what is present? Sternum is present. This bone is called as sternum. So now these are on the dorsal side. So these are the vertebrae on dorsal side. On dorsal side they are present like this. Understood or not? Now what is present on the ventral side? So on the ventral side, see, so this is dorsal ventral, exactly opposite, right? So now here I will draw this on the ventral side. I am drawing a rough diagram here. Now there is one sternum. Sternum is singular, so it is 1 in number. And on which side it is present? On the ventral side it is present. On this, in this way it is present. And in the locomotion movement, I will tell you how exactly these two are connected. Okay. Now let us see the rough diagram here. Dorsal vertebrae and ventral sternum. How they are connected? Through the ribs. Ribs are present like this. I am drawing rough diagram only for understanding purpose, but originally they are not connected like this. Ribs on the back side, they will have two heads. One is connected to this, other one is connected to the previous one. In this way they are connected, but rough diagram I am drawing, so you just observe carefully here. Okay. So in this way, ribs are connected with. Now let us see once again. These ribs are connected from the back side. Now again they are connected with sternum. Rib is connected with sternum. This rib is also connected with sternum. This rib is also connected with sternum. So in this way we are drawing this rough diagram. So please observe carefully here. Okay. So in this way they are connected with the sternum. I am drawing simply a rough diagram. So in this way, on the dorsal side, vertebrae are present. Ventral side, sternum is present. On the lateral sides, what are present? Ribs are present. Total, how many vertebrae are there? 12 vertebrae are present. So how many ribs are present? 12 pairs of ribs are present. Because on both the side, it will form the pair. So in this way from 12, so 12 will come. So 12 pairs of ribs are present. So here who is actually making this thoracic cavity? So please observe carefully here. Dorsal vertebrae, ventral sternum, lateral side ribs. Understood or not? So they are present like this. In this way they are present. And not only this, not only this. And please remember, and also there is another one. So here this is the lateral side, right? And there is a dome shaped diaphragm. It is called as a diaphragm. In simple meaning of diaphragm is wall. Diaphragm means what? It is a wall. So this diaphragm is actually made up of a muscle. This diaphragm is made up of muscle. Please remember, thoracic vertebrae are bones. Sternum is also bone. And these are the ribs. These are the ribs. They are 12 pairs. Their number is 12 pairs. These are also bones. Understood or not? So now here on this ventral side what is present? This is suppose not ventral. So on the posterior side what is present? Diaphragm is present. So bottom side it is present like this. Understood or not? So in this way they are present. Not only this. Now observe carefully here. So now here between the ribs, connecting the ribs, there are some muscles here. Between the ribs, there are some muscles here. And what are these muscles between the ribs are called as? They are called as intercostal muscles. Intercostal muscle. I don't know whether you can see or not. I will write here. Intercostal muscles. Intercostal muscles. Inter means between, costals are the ribs. Okay. So intercostal, between ribs muscles. So these are the muscles that are connecting these ribs. Understood or not? So in this way it will be a airtight container. So once again I am repeating here. So please observe carefully. Dorsal side vertebrae, ventral side sternum, lateral side ribs, and they are forming the rib cage. In this way rib cage is formed. Okay, so who is forming this rib cage? Dorsal vertebrae, ventral sternum, and lateral side ribs are present. In this way, all these are forming the rib cage and it should be a closed one. So to make it close, what happens here? So this is completely closed with the help of these muscles, and the muscles that are present between the ribs are called as intercostal muscles. And then on this one, below this, there is a dome shaped diaphragm. It is also made up of muscles. Yes or no? Anyhow, on the top, this is the neck. Anyhow, this is a very tight one. It is a closed one. So in this way, overall, now this is entire one is called as thoracic chamber. It is called as thoracic chamber. It is called as thoracic chamber. And below this diaphragm, now here you can observe this abdominal cavity. Abdominal cavity. And this is called thoracic chamber or thoracic cavity. So in this way, we are using these names. So this upper side, this is the thoracic cavity, and the bottom side, it is the abdominal cavity. Understood or not? So names are very important. Dorsal vertebrae, ventral sternum, lateral ribs. And ribs are connected by some muscles called as intercostal muscles. And below this particular one, and here there is a dome-shaped muscular structure, it is called as diaphragm. And these are the ones. So overall, this thoracic cavity is airtight container. This is the overall conclusion. What is the overall conclusion? Thoracic cavity is an airtight container. Why we are focusing on this airtight word? It is airtight word. So what is the significance of this airtight container? Now let us see. This thoracic cavity is airtight container. So for the airtight container, if you are increasing the volume, pressure inside this will be reduced. Yes or no? Just now we studied Boyle's law, right? Pressure and volume are inversely related. For the airtight container, if volume increased, pressure decreases. If volume decreases, pressure increases. This is what the logic is. This is what the significance of this airtight container. Please understand this. So, if volume of TC I am writing, thoracic cavity. If volume of thoracic cavity increases, pressure within the thoracic cavity decreases. If the volume of thoracic cavity decreases, then pressure within the thoracic cavity increases. This is what the point is. So in this way, we are not directly focusing on the lungs. Please remember here. We are not directly talking about the lungs. We are talking about the entire thoracic cavity. For the airtight container, these logics are applicable. What happens if it is not airtight? Suppose there is a leakage. Suppose let us imagine a container. Suppose when it is undergoing, the volume decreases. Suppose there is a air leakage is there. Now what happens? So now what happens? Upon decreasing the volume, pressure should increase. But if there is a leakage of the air, then how pressure will be built up? Do you have to understand this? So that's why they will ask one question here. Anyhow, separately we will discuss about this. Suppose a person is going on a bike, suppose, and then that person met with an accident. So in that accident, superficially there are there is no any damage here, not even a single cut also. There is not even a single cut also. Understood or not? But still, if the diaphragm is a muscular wall, right? If the diaphragm wall is having a small puncture there, now you just imagine, will the individual survive? Individual cannot survive. Please understand this. They will immediately suffer from this breathing issue, because this airtight container, and for this airtight container, this diaphragm is also very important. If there is a break, here, suppose let us imagine there is a cut here, diaphragm got broken, or there is a puncture in the diaphragm. This is the technical word, puncture in the diaphragm. Now what happens? When thoracic cavity volume is decreasing, now what happens? Actually pressure should be built up, but since there is a break here, now that air will escape into this. Now how the pressure will be built up here? So that is the reason why, it should be airtight container. Please remember this. So thoracic cavity is an airtight container, so that any change in the volume of thoracic cavity will result in change in the pressure inside this particular thoracic cavity. Understood or not? So this is what the relation between volume and pressure for the entire thoracic cavity we are studying. Why you are studying about entire thoracic cavity here? This is the next question. Why you are talking about thoracic cavity? We are worrying about the lungs. Now there is a relation here. The relation is, so inside this lungs are present here. So inside this lungs are present like this. The thing here is, lungs cannot contract on their own. Yes or no? Lungs cannot contract on their own. Then how it will change the volume? Then how it will change the pressure? Now observe carefully. Lungs are present in a airtight container that is called as thoracic cavity. If volume of thoracic cavity is changed, then what happens? Now here pressure will be changed. Now the same will be exerted on the lungs also. Yes or no? Suppose there is an airtight container. Inside this airtight container, there is another balloon or bag-like structure called lungs are present. If the volume of thoracic cavity is changed, the same will be applied to the lungs present inside this also. Now here, volume of thoracic cavity increased. Now here also, lungs also will increase in volume. Understood or not? Thoracic cavity volume is decreased. Lung volume is also decreased. So please understand the logic here. Lungs cannot contract on their own. That's why how we are changing the volume of the lungs? By changing the volume of thoracic cavity. Now you need to understand the relation here. We can change the volume of lungs by changing the volume of entire thoracic cavity. If thoracic cavity volume increases, lung volume also increases. If thoracic cavity volume decreases, lung volume decreases. Now understand this. If lung volume decreases, pressure inside the lung increases. Lung volume increases, pressure inside the lung decreases. Yes or no? Ultimately, we want the same thing. So, since we cannot directly change the volume or the pressure of the lungs, we are changing the volume or pressure of the thoracic cavity. So indirectly we are showing the effect on the lungs. I hope now you understood the relation. Clear? Once again, let me revise up to now, so that now I will go with the mechanism. What we are studying here, pressure is very important for movement of the air. Air always moving from high pressure to low pressure. And here during inspiration, atmospheric pressure is high and the pressure inside the lungs is less when compared with atmosphere. That's why air is coming into the lungs. During expiration, pressure inside the lungs is more. That's why from the lungs, air is going into the atmosphere. So here in the overall, what is we are doing? We are not changing the pressure of atmosphere, but simply we are changing the pressure of lungs. And we know that pressure is inversely related to volume. So pressure of lungs can be changed by changing the volume of the lungs. But the problem is lungs cannot contract on their own. If they are able to contract on their own, we can change the volume. If the volume is changed, pressure will be changed. But the problem is lungs cannot contract on their own. So that's why the lungs are present in airtight container called as thoracic cavity, which is made up of dorsal, which is having dorsal vertebrae, ventral sternum, lateral ribs, and all these ribs are connected with each other by intercostal muscles. Not only this, on the upper anterior side, this is called anterior side, this is the posterior side. This is the dorsal, this is the ventral. Please remember, dorsal, ventral, and this upper side is the anterior, bottom side is the posterior side. So on the anterior side, neck is present, it is anyhow tightly. On the posterior side, dome-shaped diaphragm is present. So in this way, this entire thoracic cavity is an airtight container. Airtight container. If the volume of this thoracic cavity is increased, volume of lung is also increased. That means pressure inside the lung will be decreased. That means pressure inside the lung is decreased. So inspiration will occur. If the volume of thoracic cavity decreased, volume of lung is also decreased. That means pressure within the lung will be increased. So expiration will occur. So in the process of expiration, inspiration, our aim is to change the volume of thoracic cavity. I hope now you understood why you are changing thoracic cavity volume, because change in the thoracic cavity volume will show the effect on change in the lung volume, so that pressure of the lung will be varied, so that expiration, inspiration will occur. Understood or not? So ultimately, to do that expiration or inspiration, indirectly we are doing change in the volume of thoracic cavity. So now what we need to study? During inspiration, how the thoracic cavity volume is changed, you need to study. And during expiration, how the thoracic cavity volume is changed, that you need to study. If you study that, the mechanism is completed. That's it. With this lecture will be completed. Understood or not? This is what the overall idea. So this is the reason why you need to have airtight container. If there is a leakage, pressure cannot be built up. So individual may die. This is what the problem is. I hope now you understood what is the significance of airtight container and how pressures and volumes are interrelated, and how inspiration and expiration are related with change in the pressures, and how pressure is related with volume, and why we are changing the volume. These are the basic logical things. You cannot by heart this. If you are trying to by heart this, you will make the mistakes. If you understand the logic, you will never make any mistake. Okay, this is where we are stopping, and then we will read NCERT content. They have given 1 or 2 paragraphs. Then I will tell you the original mechanism. Mechanism will take just 2 minutes. That's it. Okay. Now let us see this. This is how thoracic chamber. Dorsal vertebrae is present, ventral sternum is present, on the lateral side ribs are present. Anyhow, what are these white things that I will tell you directly under the locomotion and movement chapter, so don't worry about this. And anyhow, on the upper side neck is present, it is on this side it is closed, but on the bottom side, means on the posterior side, dome shaped diaphragm is present. This is what about this. Backbone means again vertebral column will come, vertebrae will come. This is what the rib cage, this is what the rib cage is. Now here you can understand this. This is the muscular diaphragm, and here this is the thoracic cavity. In this ribs are present, and dorsal vertebrae, ventral sternum are present. Now in this way, these red things are, so inside this, here they are showing this lung inside this, but here they are showing that, so between the ribs, again there are some muscles, and they are called as intercostal muscles. So in this way they are showing the diagram with respect to human, and this particular cavity is called as thoracic cavity. Below the diaphragm, what is this one? It will be abdominal cavity. Within the abdomen also some muscles are present. They are also important, but those things I will tell you separately. Clear? Boyle's law. What is the Boyle's law here? Pressure is inversely related to volume. Please remember this particular one. And here they gave some basic points. We will read this. The lungs are situated in the thoracic chamber, which is anatomically, based on the anatomy, if you see, it is airtight chamber. You need to know the significance of airtight chamber. We need airtight chamber. For the airtight chamber, if volume is changed, pressure will be changed. That is the reason here. So that's why this thoracic cavity is airtight chamber. The thoracic chamber is formed. How it is formed? Dorsally by vertebral column, vertebrae are present. Ventrally by sternum, laterally by ribs. And on the lower side means what? Posterior side, dome-shaped diaphragm is present. Dome-shaped diaphragm is present. These are the ones that are forming this thoracic cavity. The anatomical setup of lungs in the thorax is such that any change in the volume of thoracic cavity will be reflected in the lung cavity, means pulmonary cavity. That means if the thoracic cavity volume increase, lung volume will be increased. If the thoracic cavity volume decrease, lung volume will decrease. So now you just talk about the lung. If the lung volume increased, pressure decreases. If the lung volume decreases, pressure increases. This is the relation. Please understand each and every word and its significance and what is the logic behind this. Clear? Next one. Such an arrangement is essential for breathing purpose. So this type of arrangement should be present because lungs cannot contract and relax on their own. So that's why this type of setup should be present. And as we cannot directly alter means change the pulmonary volume. We cannot directly change pulmonary volume. Pulmonary volume means what? Lung volume. Directly we cannot change it because in the case of heart, it is having its own contracting muscle. So heart can change its own volume, but lungs are not like that. So that's why they are depending on this particular thoracic cavity volumes. Please understand the relation here. And here after this, in the breathing one, in the breathing process, in the entire process of the entire breathing, so we are talking actually total 5 important steps. So they have given sequentially, and in the NCERT they have given this diagram, and already in the previous lectures also I told you. Now let us see this. Slowly, one by one step, each and every step we will study. Don't worry, in the next coming lectures. But here, since they gave the 5 points, what are those 5 points? Observe carefully here. In the introductory lecture itself, I told you these points. Now let us quickly go through this. First one is the breathing. First one is called as a breathing, and it is also called as pulmonary ventilation. What is the meaning of ventilation? Air supply is called as ventilation. If air is passing through that is called as a ventilated ventilation. So that's why here pulmonary. Pulmonary means what? Lung ventilation. Pulmonary ventilation means what? Air is coming into the lungs and then from there it is going out into the atmosphere. So first point is what? Breathing. What is the breathing? From the atmosphere, oxygen rich air is coming into the lungs, means alveoli, and then CO2 rich air is expired out. It means released into the atmosphere. This is the first step, that is called breathing. So within the breathing we are adding both expiration, inspiration. This is the first point they are talking here. So first point, breathing or pulmonary ventilation, by which atmospheric air is drawn in. Drawn in means taken in into the lungs, and CO2 rich alveolar air is released out. So alveolar air is having more CO2 and that will be released into the atmosphere. This is the first step of breathing. Then what is the second step they are saying? Oxygen from alveoli will come into the blood and CO2 from the blood will go into the alveoli. That means exchange of these gases, exchange of oxygen and CO2 between the alveoli and blood capillaries will occur. This is the second step that they are saying here. Diffusion of the gases, exchange of the gases like CO2, oxygen across alveolar membrane. This is the membrane of alveolus. There exchange of gas is taking place or diffusion of gases is taking place. Clear? This is the second step they are saying. Next point what they are saying, transport of gases. That means oxygen from the lung is carried to the body parts and CO2 from the tissues is transported to the lungs. This is what happening. This is the third step, transport of gases by the blood. This is what we are talking. Fourth step, at the tissues what is happening? Oxygen from the blood is going into the tissues. CO2 from the tissues is coming into the blood. That means exchange of gases, diffusion of gases at the tissues that we are studying here. So diffusion of oxygen and CO2 between blood and the tissues. This is the fourth important point. And the last point, so once oxygen is coming into the tissues, means cells, now cells are utilizing the oxygen and producing the CO2. This is the last step that they are talking here. Utilization of oxygen by the cells for catabolic reactions, for the breakdown of various other compounds for energy production, and resultant release of CO2. In this catabolic process, what is happening? CO2 is released. In this way, oxygen is utilized and CO2 is released. This is what they are saying. In this way, total 5 steps are present. So in this, technically, out of these 5 steps, technically if you are talking, through 3 names we are using: external respiration, internal respiration, cellular respiration. Generally, this diffusion of gases across alveolar membrane is generally considered as external respiration, and diffusion of gases between blood and tissues is generally considered as internal respiration, and utilization of oxygen and production of the CO2. This particular one is generally considered as cellular respiration. Anyhow, cellular respiration you will study under plant physiology. The chapter name is respiration in higher plants. There you will study about this. But remaining 4 steps we will study in this particular chapter. Understood or not? So these are the things. So anyhow, these things slowly in the next coming lectures we will study. But in this particular lecture, what is our aim? It is to understand the mechanism of breathing. Mechanism of breathing means how exactly inspiration is occurring, how exactly expiration is taking place. If you are taking the average value, so for the inspiration it is taking approximately 0.2 seconds, and for the expiration it is taking 0.3 seconds. Understood or not? So this is what the time that it is taking. Understood or not? So this is the overall time it is taking. Clear? So this is how we are talking about this particular. This is what, oh no, okay. So it is take not 0.2, it is the 2 seconds, and this is the 3 seconds, total 5 seconds. 5 seconds for one breathing. That's why in 1 minute average how many we are getting? So it is the 12 times. So please change it. It is the 2 seconds and this is the 3 seconds. Okay, nice. Please change it. It is not 0.2, it is 2 seconds and this is 3 seconds. Please change it. So now we are talking about the process. So the process is very simple. So since you understood this, how to change this pressure, volume and all the things, now let us see. First we will talk about the inspiration. First we will go logically only. Logically only we will try to understand this. So what is happening in the inspiration? So what exactly happening in the inspiration? Air from atmosphere should enter into the lungs. Please understand, till now whatever the concept we studied, based on the concept only I will explain. Like this only we will understand. Okay. So now observe carefully. Now during inspiration what we are saying? Inspiration, atmospheric pressure is high when compared with pressure within the lungs. Yes or no? So that's why air is coming into the lungs. This is called inspiration. Now please observe carefully. Inside the lungs, low pressure. Inside the lungs, low pressure. Pressure is low means what is the relation we studied? Pressure and volume are inversely related. That means during inspiration, pressure inside the lungs is low. That means what should be the volume? Volume is high. Volume is high. Yes or no? Low pressure means what? Volume is high. So when the lung volume is high, so when the lung volume will increase, when thoracic cavity volume increases. Thoracic cavity volume is more. Already I told you, no, if thoracic cavity volume increases, lung volume increases. Lung volume increases means pressure inside the lung is, see, lung volume increases, so pressure will be decreased. When pressure is less, automatically air from the atmosphere will come into the lungs. So that means during inspiration, what should happen to thoracic cavity volume? It should be increased. Now you just think about it, how it will be increased. Just 2 points. How you will increase the thoracic cavity volume? First, let us observe this thoracic cavity. Okay. So, what is the first important point? First important point is the diaphragm. Diaphragm. Diaphragm, PHRAGM. PHRAGM. Diaphragm. See, generally we are saying it is a dome-shaped diaphragm. So, diaphragm is dome-shaped. When it is dome shaped, please observe carefully. Diaphragm is a muscle, right? It is entirely a muscle, and the muscles of diaphragm are called as phrenic muscles. Muscles of diaphragm are called as phrenic muscles. Understood or not? Now let's see. When it will be in the dome shaped, muscles means muscles will be in 2 states: relaxed state, contracted states. Muscle contraction, relaxation. Now please understand this. When it will be in dome shaped, when it is relaxed. When it is in relaxed state, it is in the dome shape. But during this inspiration, since thoracic cavity volume should be increased, now this is the thoracic cavity. This is the thoracic cavity. Please observe carefully. Thoracic cavity. Thoracic cavity. How you will increase the volume of thoracic cavity? Observe this. This is the dome shaped diaphragm. If the diaphragm is coming like this means what? It is contracting like this. Now what happens? Instead of like this, now it is becoming like this. Is the volume increased or not? Increased. Now what happens? Diaphragm contracts. The first important point is diaphragm contracts. So during inspiration, please remember diaphragm muscles are the most important muscles. You need to understand this. This inspiration will be initiated by this diaphragm muscles only, phrenic muscles only. So what happens here? Diaphragm contracts. Once it is becoming contracted, now what happens? The volume is increased like this. So in this which direction it is increased? Since it is previously it is a dome shaped and now it is moving down. Moving down means antero-posteriorly volume is increased. Initially, this is the anterior-posterior, right? Initially, it is like this, anterior-posterior. Now what happened? Now here, instead of presenting here, it is contracted up to this. Now what happened here? Initially, it is up to this, but now it is going up to this. That means antero-posteriorly due to diaphragm contraction, it is moving down. So the volume is increasing in antero-posterior direction. This is the anterior, this is the anterior, and this is the posterior. Please remember these words were used very clearly in NCERT. So due to contraction of the diaphragm, due to contraction of phrenic muscles, volume of thoracic cavity is increased, correct? But in which direction? Antero-posteriorly it is increased. This is one point that is happening. So that means it is helping in increasing the thoracic cavity volume. Not only this, there is another thing is there. That is also helping in increasing thoracic cavity volume. What is this one? This is dorsal, this is ventral, right? Now you just understand this. Between the ribs, there are some muscles. And these muscles, suppose these are the ribs. Between these ribs, there are muscles. Two types of muscles are there. Already I told about this. On the outer side, there are some muscles. They are called external intercostal muscles. External intercostal muscles. Understood or not? And not only this, for this thoracic cavity, for these ribs, inside also there are some muscles. And the inside muscles are called as internal intercostal muscles. Internal intercostal muscles. Please remember, both the types are there. But in the normal inspiration expiration, who are involved? External intercostal muscles are involved. So please observe this. These are the ribs. On the outer side, muscles are there. Outside muscles are external intercostal muscles. In the normal condition, they are in relaxed condition. In the relaxed condition, what happens? Thoracic cavity volume is less. But when intercostal muscles are contracting, generally many students are making mistake here. When they are contracting, they are thinking that they are going like this. No. External are present on outer side. When they are contracting, they are pulling the ribs away here. They are pulling the ribs away. Please understand this particular one. So now observe in the lateral direction. This is dorsal, this is ventral. Intercostal muscles are present. When they are contracting, they are pulling it like this. So that what happens? Dorso-ventrally volume is increased. Yes or no? Initially it is like this. But due to contraction, what happened? They are going like this. Now volume is increased. Volume of thoracic cavity is increased. In which direction? Dorso-ventral direction it is increased. So initially if you are observing lateral side, let us say this is the vertebral column. Suppose this is the sternum and these are connected by ribs like this. They are present like this. But since intercostal muscles are pulling up, now what is happening here? Now the thing is, vertebral column will be like that only, but the ribs and sternum are going forward. Ribs and sternum are going forward. Now what is happening? This is the dorsal side. This is the ventral side. Now what is happening here? Volume is increased. Yes or no? So in this way, volume is increasing in two directions. Contraction of the diaphragm is increasing the volume of thoracic cavity in antero-posterior direction. In this way, it is increasing volume. Whereas external intercostal muscles will contract and they are increasing the volume in dorso-ventral direction. One is dorso-ventral, one is antero-posterior. So overall, the volume is increased. This is the point you need to understand. Once the volume of thoracic cavity is increased, now what happens? It is an airtight container. Volume of thoracic cavity, if it increases, volume of the lung is also increasing. This is the relation, right? Within the airtight container, If there are some bag-like structures, the same effect is shown by these also. So thoracic cavity volume is increased. Please remember, both of them are contraction. Contraction of diaphragm, phrenic muscles, contraction of external intercostal muscles. Both the contractions will cause increase in the volume of thoracic cavity. Thoracic cavity volume increased means volume of the lung is increased. Lungs are also expanding. Once the lungs are expanding, that means pressure inside this. Pressure inside this is called as intrapulmonary pressure. Inside, intra means within. Within what? Pulmonary, lung. Intrapulmonary pressure. So pressure within the lung. Intra is within, pulmonary is the lung pressure. So within the lung, the pressure within the lung is called intrapulmonary pressure or intra-alveolar pressure, or in simple, alveolar pressure is increased. Once the alveolar pressure is high, okay, so volume increases. Volume increases means what? Pressure decreases. Sorry. So here we are increasing the volume of the thoracic cavity, right? Volume increases. Volume increases means what? Pressure decreases. Pressure decreases means what? Automatically air from the atmosphere will come into the lungs through this respiratory system. This is what the inspiration is. Exactly opposite is the expiration. Now observe carefully here. Next one is the expiration. If you know inspiration, you can easily understand the expiration. In the expiration, what happens? Expiration, atmospheric pressure remains same. Atmospheric pressure remains same, but the pressure in the lungs. Now what happens? Air from lungs is going into atmosphere. That means pressure in the lungs is high. Pressure in the lungs is high means volume of lungs is low. Volume of lung is low means thoracic cavity volume. Volume of thoracic cavity should be low. Volume of thoracic cavity is less. How the volume of thoracic cavity is decreased? Exactly opposite. See here. See here. Here what is happening? Here what is happening? Diaphragm is contracting in the case of inspiration for increasing the volume. Now diaphragm will relax. Once diaphragm is relaxing, again it will come back to original dome shape. Once diaphragm is once diaphragm is relaxing, it will come back to original dome shape. That means what happened? Anteroposteriorly volume decreased. Next one here. Here also, external intercostal muscles will relax. So again it will come back to original condition, relaxed condition. In the relaxed condition, again what happens? Volume decreases. So in both the cases, volume decreases. Here, phrenic muscles of diaphragm relax, so that anteroposteriorly volume decreases. And here, external intercostal muscles relax, so that dorsoventrally also volume decreases. So now what happens to the overall volume of the thoracic cavity? Overall volume of thoracic cavity decreased. So here first one, relaxation of diaphragm. So decreasing the volume. Next one, relaxation of external intercostal muscles, EICM, external intercostal muscles. So now what happens? Overall result is volume of thoracic cavity decreased. Once the volume of thoracic cavity decreased, volume of the lungs is also decreased. Once volume of lung is decreased, now the pressure is more. So it is intrapulmonary pressure is more. So that's why it is called positive pressure. Please remember these words: positive pressure, negative pressure. During expiration, lungs are having positive. Why it is called positive? Positive means more than atmospheric pressure. When compared with atmospheric pressure, it is more. That's why it is a positive pressure. Because of this positive pressure within the lungs, air is expelled through the respiratory system into the atmosphere. But in the case of inspiration, what you are saying here it is low pressure. When compared with atmosphere, it is low pressure. That's why it is called a negative pressure. Within the lungs, negative pressure is seen during inspiration. Within the lungs, positive pressure is seen during expiration. These are the things. With this inspiration, expiration completed. All the steps are completed. So with this, the entire mechanism is completed. And these volumes we can understand with the help of spirometer. But regarding this, I will tell you more details in the next lecture. With this lecture is completed. So now we will make one simple information here. So first one here, during the inspiration. Now let us write some summarized information. During inspiration, here atmosphere and then lungs. Okay. First one, what we are talking is regarding the during inspiration. Let us see what exactly happening in the inspiration. Now here volume. So anyhow, please remember this atmosphere we are not changing here. In the lungs, what happens? In the lungs, pressure is less when compared with atmosphere. Yes or no? So pressure is less means volume of lungs is more. That means thoracic cavity volume is also high. And to make this thoracic volume more, what is happening here? Contraction of diaphragm means phrenic muscles. Phrenic muscles means what? Diaphragm, and also external intercostal muscles. This is the overall summarized most important words. During inspiration, pressure within the lungs is less. That's why it is called a negative pressure. And volume of the lungs is more. Thoracic volume is also more. To increase the thoracic cavity volume, contraction of the diaphragm, phrenic muscles will occur. So anterior-posteriorly volume is increased. External intercostal muscles will contract. So dorso-ventrally volume is increased. So overall volume of thoracic cavity increased. So lung volume increased. So pressure decreased. It is intrapulmonary pressure is less. That's why it is the negative when compared with atmospheric pressure. That's why negative pressure is present in the lungs. So air from the atmosphere is coming into the lungs. That's it. This is what the inspiration. Expiration is exactly opposite. What is the opposite? Relaxation of phrenic muscle. Again you will get normal dome shape. That means anterior-posteriorly volume decreased. Relaxation of external intercostal muscles. Dorso-ventrally volume is decreased. Now overall volume of thoracic cavity decreases. Overall volume of the lung decreases. Pressure inside the lung will increase. That means intrapulmonary pressure is more. That's why it is called a positive pressure. Now from the lungs air will go into atmosphere. So that's why if you know for inspiration, you can write simply opposite for this. You will get for the expiration. Clear? And the next important point with respect to energy is, please remember there is a chapter called locomotion movement. There you will understand this. Contraction, for the contraction of muscles. Contraction of muscles need ATP energy. Please remember this. Contraction of the muscles require ATP energy. Energy is required for muscle contraction. Energy is required for muscle contraction means when the contraction is occurring, inspiration or expiration or both. Only during inspiration. During inspiration, contraction of muscles. During expiration, it is relaxation. For the relaxation, energy is not required. For the contraction, energy is required. So for the contraction, energy is required. Energy is required. Energy is required. So for the inspiration, energy is required. Energy required means it is active process. Energy required means it is active process. Energy not required means passive process. That's why in the case of human, inspiration is active process. What is the meaning of this? In the case of human, for the inspiration process, energy is required because contraction of muscles is taking place. That's why it is considered as active process. Now what is the opposite word? Expiration is a passive process. It does not require energy because it is simply relaxation of the muscles. You need to understand each and every point. So during this expiration, inspiration, how much of volume of air is taken in? Please remember, so there are some average values are there for the healthy individual. Please remember this because based on the lung capacity, size and all these things. So small changes in the volumes are there. But anyhow, some average value they have given in the NCERT. So those values we are studying in the next lecture. And how we are calculating how much air we are taking, how much air we are releasing, how much is remaining in the lungs. All these things we can analyze or we can calculate with the help of an instrument, and the instrument is called as spirometer. Anyhow, more details regarding this we can study in the next lecture. That's it. With this breathing mechanism of breathing is completed. Please remember, go through the logic. Pressure difference, pressure volume relation. If you want to change the volume of lung, you need to change the volume of thoracic cavity. So what are the muscles helping in changing the volume of thoracic cavity? This is the general process. But here they have added one more word. Please remember, We studied about external intercostal muscles, right? But inside the ribs, on the inner side of this cavity, there are muscles called internal intercostal muscles. Internal intercostal muscles. Please remember, external intercostal muscles contract. If they undergo contraction, volume of thoracic cavity increases. External intercostal muscles are contracting like this, so volume is increasing. But internal intercostal muscles, if they contract, volume decreases. Internal intercostal muscles, if they contract, volume of thoracic cavity decreases. That means in the normal process of inspiration and expiration, external intercostal muscles are involved. If you want to do some forced, suppose you want to contract more, you want to release more air. In the normal process, we are doing like this. But if you want to do, then what you need to do? You need to contract more. At that time, internal intercostal muscles are very important. For the forced expiration, contraction of internal intercostal muscles is also important. Not only this, when you just feel it, force, at that time, our abdominal muscles are also coming inside. So here, abdominal muscles. Different muscles are there. Anyhow, you don't need the names of those muscles. Abdominal muscles are also important. So, internal intercostal muscles and abdominal muscles. These are helping in some changing extra volumes. For extra inspiration, for extra expiration, for extra inspiration, for extra expiration. In those processes, they may be usually involved. But generally, they are involving in forced expiration process. Clear? This is what. So, in this way, normal condition we are talking about phrenic muscles. Phrenic muscles contract, volume increases. These two are generally involved. But for additional change in the volumes, these muscles are also used. Remember this that much, but those mechanisms are not there in our syllabus. Simply remember the names. That's it. With this, this particular content is completed. Now let us see this. So this is what about the inhalation process. Okay. So this is what about the expiration, means exhaled air is exhaled like this. So here in the NCERT very nicely they have given the diagram. During inspiration, what is happening? So volume should be increased. Now here thoracic volume is increased. How it is increased? Now this diaphragm is contracted like this. So initially it is like dome shaped. Now it is becoming almost flat. So anterior posteriorly volume is increased. Next one. Now this external intercostal muscles are taken away from the ribs. This is the dorsal side. These are the vertebrae, right? And these are the rib side. So now they are contracted like this. So dorsoventrally volume is increased. So overall volume is increased. So overall volume increase means lung volume increases. Pressure in the lung decreases. So air is coming into this. That is called inspiration. What is expiration here? It is simply opposite. Opposite means what happens here? Volume should be decreased. How it will decrease? Now dome, this almost it became flat, right? Diaphragm. Now again it is relaxed to become the flat shape. Sorry, dome shape. So because of this, what happens? Anterior posteriorly volume decreased. External intercostal muscles relaxed. So dorsoventrally volume decreased. Overall volume is decreased. Volume decreased means same thing happens for the lung also. Thoracic cavity volume decreased means lung volume also decreasing. Lung volume decreased means pressure increases. If pressure increases, it is going out into the atmosphere. That process is called expiration. That's it. This is what they're saying. Respiratory rate on an average. So please remember, I told you for the correction. For the inspiration, it is taking 2 seconds. For the expiration, it is taking average. These are average values. So on an average, for one breathing, it is 5 seconds. 5 seconds. So in 1 minute, 1 minute means 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Okay. 5 seconds for one breath. Okay. 5 seconds for one breath means in 60 seconds, how many? So 60 divided by 5, it will be 12 breaths. 12 breaths per minute. Do the calculation. So in 1 minute, on an average, 12 breaths we are getting if you are taking these values. But please remember, these are average values only. So in general, per 1 minute, how many times? 12 to 16 times for healthy individual. But please remember, in the case of children, this rate is a little bit more. These logics we will study separately. because they have not mentioned regular one. Under the extra lecture for this particular chapter, in those I will cover these extra points. In the regular one, I don't want to add all these things, so listen carefully. So for healthy adult individual, on an average in 1 minute 12 to 16 times they will do this breathing. Understood or not? This is what the average calculation. So this is what, okay, there I gave 0.2, 0.3, so please change it. This is 2 seconds and 3 seconds. This is what the calculation is. Clear? So this is what they are saying here. This is what the respiratory rate or the breathing rate is. Now spirometer, this is a very simple type. This is the digital one. So in this way many advanced things are there. So with the help of this we can calculate what is the volume of air we are taking in, going out. Not only this, many things are there. Those things we will see in the next lecture. Next one, let us quickly go through the NCERT reading part. Breathing involves 2 stages. One is inspiration, other one is expiration. During inspiration what happens? Inspiration, during which atmospheric air is drawn in, atmospheric air is taken into the lungs, and during expiration, by which alveolar air is released. So air from the alveolus is released into the atmosphere. The movement of air into and out of the lungs is carried out by creating pressure gradient. Pressure gradient means what? Pressure difference. Pressure difference is important for movement of the air. Where? Pressure gradients between lungs and the atmosphere. Can you change the volume of atmosphere, pressure of the atmosphere? No. That's why we are changing only the pressure within the lungs. So here, inspiration can occur. When it will occur? If pressure within the lungs means intrapulmonary pressure is less than the atmospheric pressure. So if the pressure within the lung is less, then from atmosphere it will come into the lung. That is, there is a negative pressure in the lungs. When compared with the atmosphere, pressure in the lungs is less. That's why it is called a negative pressure within the lungs with respect to atmospheric pressure in comparison with atmospheric pressure. Negative means lesser. That's it. Similarly, expiration takes place when the intrapulmonary pressure is higher than atmospheric pressure. When the expiration will occur? When the pressure within the lung is more. That means intrapulmonary pressure is more when compared with atmospheric pressure. That's what they are saying. The diaphragm, very important. The diaphragm and a specialized set of muscles called external and internal intercostal muscles. External intercostal muscles and internal intercostal muscles. Okay, and these are the ones. And where they are present? They are present between the ribs. Intercostal muscles are present between the ribs. So diaphragm and intercostal muscles, they help in the generation of such pressure gradients, pressure differences. Next one, inspiration is initiated. When the inspiration will occur? By contraction of the diaphragm. Diaphragm is contracting, which increases volume of the thoracic cavity. Volume of thoracic cavity is increased in which direction? Antero-posterior direction, in the antero-posterior axis. In this direction volume is increased. Next one, the contraction of external intercostal muscles. External intercostal muscles are contracted. So dorsoventrally, in this direction volume is increased. So external intercostal muscle lifts up the ribs. Ribs are lifting up. That's why the chest is moving up. So during the inspiration, chest is moving up. During expiration, chest is going down. This is what. So it is lifting the ribs. And the sternum. So ribs and the sternum, they are lifting up, and hence it is causing the increase in the volume of thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis, in this axis. So axis also you need to remember. Next one, the overall increase in thoracic volume causes a similar increase in pulmonary volume. That means if thoracic volume increases, lung volume, pulmonary volume also increases. An increase in pulmonary volume decreases intrapulmonary pressure to less than atmospheric pressure. So if the volume of lung is increased, so pressure is decreasing. It is decreasing in such a way that it is less than atmospheric pressure. So which forces the air from outside to move into the lungs. This process is called inspiration. That's it. That is the inspiration. In this way, air is coming into the lungs. Next one, opposite. Relaxation. Relaxation of diaphragm and relaxation of intercostal muscles returns the diaphragm. Diaphragm is coming back to again dome shape, and also intercostal muscles are going back. So this is what happening. So diaphragm and the sternum to their normal position. Normal position is the relaxed position, and reduce the thoracic volume. Because of this, volume of thoracic cavity is decreased. If volume decreased means thereby pulmonary volume. So lung volume is also decreased. So if lung volume decreases, this leads to increase in intrapulmonary pressure. If lung volume decreases, pressure inside the lung increases. So intrapulmonary pressure increases. How much? Slightly above the atmospheric pressure. When compared with atmospheric pressure, now it is slightly more than this. causing the expulsion of air from the lungs. So because of this, air from the lungs is going into the atmosphere. This process is nothing but expiration. Next one, we have the ability to increase the strength of inspiration and expiration with the help of additional muscles in the abdomen. So this is the normal thing we have studied. So you can also further change these volumes with the help of extra muscles that are present in the abdomen. So these muscles, if abdominal muscles are contracted, now forced expiration. If abdominal muscles are more relaxed, now you can take more air inside, so more inspiration. In this way, for additional changes, you can use these extra muscles also. Next one, on an average, a healthy human breathes 12 to 16 times per minute. Calculation also I told you, so please observe carefully. The volume of air involved in the breathing movements can be estimated by using a spirometer. So how much of air is coming inside, going outside, these calculations we can do with the help of an instrument. Instrument is called as spirometer, remember this, and which helps in clinical assessment of pulmonary function. So whether we are having some, what is our lung capacities, what are the capacities, do we have any issues? In some case of some infections, we cannot breathe normally. So in this way, so clinically, so these doctors can estimate, so what is our capacity, what is the issue. So in this way, whether it is resolved or not, so what to do. So these type of things they can analyze with respect to volumes and the capacities. Clear? So with this part is completed. So in the next lecture, we will separately study about what are the various volumes and capacities that are related to this lung. Those things we will study in the next lecture. Okay. Thank you so much. With this particular lecture is completed. We will meet in the next lecture. Thank you.